I've heard so much about how Premiere and After Effects are some of the most powerful video editing tools out there, but I've never actually made the switch to either of them when Vegas still works for me, and it works for pretty much everyone else. Maybe I'll use After Effects when I need some really heavy effects, but I've never encountered a situation where I needed them because I mostly do garbage PowerPoint presentation videos that Vegas Pro can handle about as well as a lightsaber handling wood chopping. That, and there are more reasons for me to not make the switch, namely Adobe and their notoriously troublesome subscription models and buggy recent releases that got people into so much trouble that they ended up pirating their softwares, which is more of a tradition when dealing with these really expensive editing suits and their unusually high subscription prices. Another reason why I stick to something basic and free like Paint.net or Inkscape. Anyway, I want to talk about Adobe because there's a recent but kind of not recent hoopla running the older versions of their softwares. Adobe warns Creative Cloud users with older apps of legal problems if they continue using outdated versions. Unfortunately, there are people who chose to use outdated versions because some of the newer versions can be quite buggy, and there are some features in the older versions that the newer versions removed. While you are still able to use all of the older versions, the consequences is that they're not licensed by Adobe, and therefore you're open to being sued by third parties, forcing you to either update to the latest version or just cancel your Creative Cloud subscription. Matt Rosnack from Kupo Games, responsible for the Epic Battle Fantasy series, got an email from Adobe about 5 days ago. The email stated that Adobe has discontinued certain older versions of Creative Cloud applications, and as a result, he is no longer licensed to use them. He can still use them just fine, but he and many others who use the older versions might be at risk for being claimed of infringement from third parties. A spokesperson can't make any comment on who the third parties are as it concerns an ongoing litigation. Now, who are these third parties, you might ask? And this is where we get to the best part because this makes Adobe more guilty than you and your search history. The concerned third parties that will potentially put you to legal troubles might be the companies that Adobe partnered with who are also having a legal spat with them, like probably Dolby. Apparently Adobe and Dolby, wow, these two are tongue twisters, are having a little bit of a copyright spat at each other since last year. According to the complaint filed by Dolby, Adobe has failed to live up to its licensing obligations and is guilty of copyright infringement and breach of contract. Essentially, the basic terms of Adobe's licenses for products containing Dolby technologies are clear. When Adobe granted its customers a license to any Adobe product that contained Dolby technology, Adobe was contractually obligated to report the sale to Dolby and pay the agreed upon royalty. Not only that, but Dolby also has the right to inspect Adobe's records through a third-party audit in order to verify the accuracy of Adobe's sales reporting and associated payments of royalties. But the problem is, Adobe refused to engage in even basic auditing and information sharing practices. You can check out the entire lawsuit hoopla on the Torrent Freak article that I will link on the Medium post. Adobe's brand new Creative Cloud model is a great example of software as a service, and it highlights one of the potential risks of this model. If the service provider screws up, they can potentially ruin your access towards the software, whereas more traditional software models can still run just fine without the needs of support from those service providers. I really doubt that Dolby would go on their ways to sue individual customers for using older versions of Adobe softwares, but what we do know is that it's not a good look for Adobe for not being able to fulfill their contractual obligations to partnering companies, and it's not a good look when their products are being affected and subsequently their customers. But regardless, if you don't like the prospect of Dolby or any other company suing you thanks to Adobe not fulfilling their obligations, there's no better time to cancel your subscription now. Are there any other alternatives on their creative suits? Absolutely. Credits for Everblue Comic for finding a lot of these alternatives. Tired of Photoshop? Move on to Paint.net or GIMP. I still use those and they're still quite good. Vegas Pro isn't as well versed as Premiere or After Effects, but it does the job rather well, especially with additional plugins, and you can buy them at Humble Software Rebundle for only $25. I also heard that DaVinci Resolve is a very powerful editor that you can get for free, and Kdenlive looks really promising. And of course, Audacity, always so helpful for my audio production and editing works. You can consult this chart and many other users out there so that you can escape from the Adobe hell.